As fun as world building can be in the moment, you are literally playing God when you do. And seeing as you actually aren't, unless I'm missing something, there are a lot of pitfalls that you can fall into, and it starts with the mindset that a lot of world builders don't put themselves into. I need you to pay complete attention and at least try to internalize the words that are about to come out of my mouth. Every aspect of our reality as you see it is subject to change in a fantasy world that you created. Sounds obvious, right? But it's not just things like climate down to fashion, religion, common sayings, days of the week. We can take things many steps further. Days don't have to be a concept in your world. Gender roles could be non-existent. Crustaceans could be the dominant species. The world could actually be flat. It's a great series, check it out. There is no standard for fantasy or sci-fi, not Tolkien, not D&D, not The Expanse, or whatever else you're thinking of in your mind right now. Allow me to introduce the magical cube of problems. We just tackled one side, and this next side is where you curb what I just said. Hard. Yes, we have a sandbox where we can literally do anything, but that definitely does not mean you have to do everything. There are usually two reactions to the every aspect of our reality is subject to change bit. One is that scene from Inside Out where all the little sprites in your brain are running around and everything's on fire, and the other is, oh, I can build everything, and then trying to build every single aspect of your world. The latter is what we in the biz like to call world builder's disease, and it is as common as it is deadly. Trust me. I see this a lot in world builders. I actually struggle with it a bit myself, where they'll completely ignore the fact that there's an entire story that works in tandem with their world. Whether you're crafting a D&D campaign or writing the next Star Wars. Hey, if you're world building to world build, knock yourself out. But if your story is heavy on the political intrigue, then an emphasis on borders and rulers is a natural step towards that. Might want to focus more on magic if your protagonist has to learn it at some point. Your Silmarillion doesn't need to be nearly as extensive if you don't plan to publicize it like Tolkien did. And as is the nature of a problem cube, once we solve one side, another side rears its ugly head. You might have already noticed the issue. So right now, this is your story, and this is the world you've built around it. All this blank space are things you could have built but didn't. And that is simultaneously the best case scenario and the worst thing that you can do. You didn't waste time on things that won't show up, but then there is this flimsy line between what's built and what isn't. If the reader stands here and looks at your world at large, which they will because they're smart, it starts to fall apart very quickly. This is where Ernest Hemingway comes in. His iceberg theory loosely states,
now you listen here, you little you, as the writer, are supposed to know all of this. You're gonna get in your shitty little writer submarine and you're gonna see the entire iceberg. Now your readers, they're dumb as and they only see the top of the iceberg because their little brains can only stay on the surface. But because your brain is shockingly not as smooth, you know the entire iceberg, and you can frame it in such a way that their thick little heads think they can see the entire thing. It's hilarious.
Thanks, Ernie.
Fuck you.
What a lovely man. He's also right, by the way. But the thing is, we already established that it's not ideal to build every detail in your world. We can't know the entire iceberg. So what's the answer? Fake it. We remove the stark line and get a gradient instead. The amount of world building you do fades with the vision of the reader. The mountain gets foggier the further we go. They'll get to a point where they can't even see the mountain anymore, but they'll know it's still there. But it isn't there. All there is blank space, all the work you didn't suffer doing. Diagrams and metaphors are fantastic, but how do you actually apply this? Well, let's go back to our story that's heavy on the political intrigue, or in other words, Game of Thrones. The borders, maps, and people in power need to be clearly defined because those are the main pieces that are interacting in the story. We need to understand pretty much everything about them for the interactions to make sense. Alright, what's the next natural progression? So how do those powerful people get in power? History, another part of our world we need to flesh out detail. It's going to dictate how those political parties interact. Oh, culture is going to be a big part of that as well. Ironborn and people of the North are not going to interact the same. Bro culture's on the list, and the ball keeps rolling and rolling, but notice how we don't talk about religion or the lower class. Even though those elements do come into play later, they're not nearly as significant. You hear the old gods, the Lord of Light, the drowned god, you see the religious call in King's Landing, and judging from how extensively the rest of Westeros has been built, you assume there's just as much depth to the religion as well. You see the mountain inside the fog, and there is more depth, but Martin doesn't have to build the religions of all 30-something deities in his world. He probably did for fun though. His lore book is actually what House of the Dragons is based off of. Also, Martin has an incredibly huge world, so most things are probably going to be built. But something like the Gentleman Bastards is an excellent example of the other end of the spectrum. If you're a superfan though, you probably know all those 30-something deities, but you don't need that to understand the story of Game of Thrones. And would you look at that? We're halfway there. More than halfway there. What? You see, this side of the cube was forgetting to make everything cohesive. All these aspects of your world are not independent of each other. They need to interact to create a believable world. It's so funny when I see stories like, oh, this is medieval England, but everyone has magic. If everyone had magic, it would not look like medieval England. People would use it in their everyday lives for transport, for work. There would probably be a caste system around it. It would dictate culture. You can't just dump something into your world and say it doesn't affect anything else. Think about it like orbiting planets. The bigger the change is from real life, the more gravity it will have on everything else. We've already mentioned magic, so let's go there. It's another significant aspect of Game of Thrones world building. How does it relate to the political intrigue? Well, dragons are a part of the magic, and they are essentially nukes. If you have one, you are all powerful, which is why the Targaryens were able to stay in power for so long. Do you see how it also gravitates towards history? This power makes the Targaryens akin to gods among the common folk, thus dictating an aspect of culture. This can play very well with the next part of the cube once you solve it, which is ignoring the rule of cool or focusing too much on realism. I imagine most world builders don't have a problem with this one, but they ignore one crucial aspect of it. This is a bit similar to the first side of the cube, but whereas that one was more focused on showing you how far you can take world building, this one is different because you probably already have one or two really cool ideas you want to execute. This is speculative fiction. Execute your crazy, insane ideas. Your readers and audience want to be transported to another world. Here's the secret. That's probably why they like the genre so much. They will suspend their disbelief and give you leeway to do it. Now, why I said this can pair really well with cohesiveness is that, yeah, do the cool thing you want to do, but don't ignore how it interacts with the rest of the world you've built. For example, in a fantasy world that I'm currently working on for my novel, I just wanted to make the most coolest outlandish creatures that I could come up with. But then I hadn't surrounded this concept with a world where these creatures would naturally evolve to be these things, which could create a disconnect in the reader's mind. So I was like, how do I solve this? Why don't I just make natural evolution not a factor? Unnatural evolution. Magic leaks in from another dimension and warps the world in whatever way it sees fit. Nobody's arguing the science of evolution with me if I give them that as my reason. But now there's this problem of magic leaking in from elsewhere. Wait, that's not a problem. Hell yeah, what else does magic change? The landscape? The people? What if I'm writing sci-fi and I can't just magic things into my world? An alien race brings in a crazy virus that only morphs animals. I still get my cool outlandish creatures. When you constrain yourself to not just what you want, but how it will affect other things, you start to come up with really interesting ways for them to interact. You create chemical reactions that take you places you never expected to go, and your world is usually better for it. Now, you might have already noticed that you can't just solve 5 sides of a problem cube. You've already used the pieces on the other sides, and the only pieces that are left solve the last side. And that is what happens when you fix all of these problems. It becomes nearly impossible for you to create a stagnant world, which is another thing I see in countless of worlds. The 90s were not the same as the 2000s, and both of them were completely removed from the 60s. Things will look different a decade from now, and that's all within one lifespan. The world is constantly evolving. Yeah, dragons are nukes and the Targaryens have been in power for centuries, but then the Baratheons took over, then the Lannisters. It doesn't always have to be wars and coups d'etats. Technology can change your world, cultural evolution, the environment. And it's okay if your story doesn't focus on this, but having it happen in the background can make your world feel so much more realistic. But there is one final part of the cube, and that is the cube as a whole. I am milking this metaphor for everything it's got, huh? What this is right here is trust. And I have to be real, if you're watching this, chances are you don't have it. Sanderson can create a world where the readers have to climb a 100-meter brick wall and their fingernails to understand the world, and they will. At least I know I will, because I also know there's going to be an amazing story on the other side of that wall. Yeah, everything I talked about is going to help you create a better world, and Sanderson does all that too, but he can ignore things like not world building as deep or creating touchstones to our reality. He has a lot of leeway because of who he is. He can scramble the cube a little bit and still present it to his readers as a complete world and story, and they'll accept it. Same goes for King and Martin and any other famous author. They have already established that trust, their rapport with their readers for years and years. So just keep in mind that emulating everything they do might not always be the best thing for you. That being said, there is something they do that everyone should, and you can find that out in this video right here. Side note, I know this isn't actually how you solve a cube. Pro cubers, do not come at me. Okay, bye.